Oh, hey, this is a little bit awkward. I was planning fxhash episode 6 for today, but something a little bit weird has come up and I can't quite get it out on time. So I've pushed episode 6 back to next week, the 13th, I think. Yeah, sorry about that. I just set the deadline on. I couldn't quite hit it. So welcome to the unofficial fxhash episode. Hi, I'm Dan Catt, contemporary print artist and professional opinion haver. Shoot into the light, they said. That'll make for a good video. Obviously, the big news is fxhash got pushed back a little bit, but that's why I did the funny thing pretending to... Yeah, anyway. And that meant that this episode is going to be a little bit weird. I am going to have a bit of an odd episode. I thought we'd just have a chat, a talk, and something came up this morning, which is about skeuomorphism in generative art, and I thought it was quite a good thing to talk about. So I'm going to get back to the studio and record that. I'm going to go get some lunch first, so this should be a nice fun video. Actually, this left light is better. Why didn't I do this? Don't pay attention to the experts, they all lie. I'm just going to move this lovely book out of the way. This video is a day late because I decided yesterday I wasn't going to record a video, and then today I've decided to record it again, and I've been on and off about it because one, fxhash is all late and stuff like that, so that messed all that up. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. And the other is, this is about the thorny issue of skeuomorphism. Hey Kitty, how do you pronounce skeuomorphism?
Hey Dan, skeuomorphism is pronounced skeuomorphism. Duh.
That's the trouble with having a sassy AI helping you. Anyway, the issue of skeuomorphism in generative art, which has flared up again, and it's never going to go away. And this is based on the opinion of a middle-aged man on the internet, and I'm going to solve that by adding the opinion of a middle-aged man on the internet. So strap in for some opinions. This is all kind of surfaced on Twitter from this tweet where Joshua PlayStation is basically saying, giving an example of an architect who's talking about some modern architecture that's been influenced and copied from some plastic casts of some marble columns that were copied from some wooden columns, and at the top of the wooden columns there's these decorative features up there fluting which were designed to hold the join, so they're actually a practical thing. And then of course when you get to marble you don't actually need them anymore, but they've been copied over, and you copy all these things that no longer serve a purpose. And the example of this is in digital. We don't need to copy over things from physical painting, brush strokes, things like that, because they're not native to digital. That's like an anachronism. And when we're working with a digital medium, we should be leaning into that and taking advantage of what digital stuff can do for us and moving forwards in that technology rather than looking back. That's the gist of it. Interestingly enough though, when asked about adding noise to one of his projects, he said, "This old man loves noise, noise makes everything better." And then later on says, "In all honesty, I wonder if my love of noise is because of decades of working on a CRT monitor." Probably. Now, obviously a CRT monitor is kind of like an analog thing. Noise comes from an analog thing, so it's a bit like saying we must lean into digital, don't have any hangover some analog thing, unless it's noise, because I happen to like noise, even though noise is reflective of analog film, grain, all of that type of stuff. And even with paintbrushes, an artist chooses a canvas because it has a texture to add noise more than necessarily the paint. I mean, the artist could choose to paint on a really smooth surface to reduce noise. Anyway, that's a whole separate thing. I'm not saying this to go, oh look, there's a contradiction in what he's saying, therefore everything is wrong, because I firmly believe that people can have many contradictory beliefs all at the same time, and that's what makes us human. And I can believe several things at once, and those things can change all the time. So that's not like a gotcha. I just find the bit about noise quite entertaining. I'm also very sympathetic to the you should lean into the digital medium. It provides things that you can't find in painting, things like that. But I think an artist like Lisa Orth, she's talked about digital first in a lot of her work, not necessarily all the time. But yeah, so that's my stance is, yeah, sure, certainly lean into digital. But here's my view on the skeuomorphism thing. And I'm going to use a bad example and a bad analogy, which makes everything else bad. But take a circle and a triangle and a square over here. It's very simple, it's abstracted art. So you could go, oh, I'm a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old and I'm just going to draw these shapes. Or you could be an artist who's studying a cathedral scene, and you start off by doing lots of studies of it, lots of sketches of the cathedral with the sun in the sky and then the plaza down below and then the shape of the cathedral. And then you do abstract art. You start abstracting that out. You reduce it down to just the outlines. You reduce it down to just the colors, and you go through these phases of reduction and reduction and reduction. as abstract art, and you can have a sketchbook full of this, and then you end up with a circle representing the sun, and the triangle representing the shape of the cathedral, and the square representing the plaza down here. And you've come up with the same design, this circle, triangle, square, that a 5-year-old did with a circle, triangle, square. They're exactly the same, they're identical, only you've arrived at them from different routes. And then you're going, well, is this done by a 5-year-old? Is this art of any worth or merit? And is this art? And you can't say unless you've seen all the sketchbooks and you know the journey of how the person got there. So that's a very basic premise. Let's have a look at Monet with his haystacks. Now, Monet did about 25 haystacks. He did a study of them, different times of the day, because he's really interested in the colour and the light. So he's doing a study of those. And then let's move on to Monet's water lilies, of which he did over 250 of them. That's over 30 years. So he's studying time of day, seasons, where he's standing, and also the technology of paint. Paint changed quite a lot from a technological point of view over those 30 years. So he's exploring that. Now, if you take someone who's doing painting, they're working with paints and palettes and spatulas and brushes and all sorts of things, and they go, oh, I'm doing all these different studies of water lilies. What happens if I add code onto the end? I'm going to use a computer now to help me carry on exploring what I'm doing. So they're adding one more tool to their Painterly tool brush, and instead of taking 30 years to generate 250 of these scenes, they can explore different combinations and permutations, very generative art. So they're an artist coming from a painting background who can now suddenly generate lots of things at speed. And of course, that's going to be a continuation of what they've already done. Whereas somebody else, let's say an engineer, this is nothing against engineers, I am one, comes in with databases and schemas and all those type of things, and they think, I'm going to do art, so I'm going to do art and I'm going to make it look like these paintings. So they work on their code to make it look very painterly, and they come up with these painting outputs, and now you've come from two different directions. An artist adding one more tool to their collection of tools they've already done, and a different person emulating all these paintings. And if you're going to say skeuomorphism is wrong because this person is trying to simulate natural materials, then you're going, this person who's added just one more tool to their repertoire, that's all wrong as well. And you can't tell whether this painterly thing or this painterly thing, which direction they've come from. So to throw it all out, I think, is essentially a terrible thing. Oh hey, it's video editing down here. I realised I wanted to say one more thing about this, and that's we're seeing lots of artists come from their traditional practices and then trying to learn code, because generative art and code is really fascinating and interesting. But obviously often they're looking to augment the work that they're already doing. So it's a little bit weird to tell them, oh, now you've started using code, you've picked this one new thing, you have to throw everything away and then really just be digital about everything. I mean, that's going to be off-putting, so we really don't want to be doing that. Anyway, I just want to say that we want to be encouraging artists who are picking up code to not just throw everything they've ever learned away. Right, back to the editing. I have an arts degree. I come from an arts and a graphic design background, love graphic design, and also quite a lot of data visualization. And I really love playing the game of what happens if this famous graphic designer who designed this album cover used generative art that we have now, and instead of spending all that time generating one album cover or one spread for a magazine, they could generate 1,000 of them and pick from those. So that's where I'm coming from, is I like that very strong visual graphic design element that lends itself really well to digital. But I also really like printing those out and printing them out onto textured paper. Also, I do pen plotting that has very clean SVG lines, but as soon as you send it to the machine to draw with paper on texture, then you bring all that texture in and it has a whole different feeling. But what I want to do is I want to have the experience of the print and the digital being very close together, or the pen plot and the original very close together. So I add in the wavy lines into the digital that translate over to the pen plot to make the digital version look closer to the physical, because I want them to look the same. So you have them existing both digital and physical, and you can possess both of those things. With the graphic design, what I do, what I've seen other people do, is I have the texture noise, and then you press a key to toggle it off when you print it, because you know the paper's going to reintroduce that texture. You're not printing noise over the top of noise. So you have two versions, a clean digital one that's made to look a little bit more noisy like the physical one, and then the file you send to get printed out is super clean because the physical introduces all that in. And I don't think this is wrong either, that I want my print and my digital to look close together, even though I'm using a very digital language when I'm talking about graphic design and data visualization. Which is to say, it's complicated. There's no one set answer. Do what you want. And when it comes to looking at other people's work, you don't know where they've come from. You don't know whether they've come from an art background, design background, engineering background, or whether they're just adding code as a tool set, or whether they're completely code, unless you can easily see the artist's thinking and how they got to the final thing. And I really think artists ought to do that, is show they're working more. Then it's very difficult to judge it. And I don't think you should really be judging other people anyway. That's just weird. And you don't even need to be consistent. Like I said before, people are complicated. You can contain multitudes. Sometimes this is the right thing and other times this is the right thing. I do want to pull up this though, that in my opinion is wrong. So Joshua goes on to say, I'm not saying that work that does this is bad, skeuomorphism, and then yes I am, don't take it personal, lol. So at that point you're going from opinion to I'm not saying this word's bad, actually I am saying this is bad. You're making that statement and then wrapping it up with a don't take it personally, in a sort of, and if you are upset about what I've just said, that's kind of on you, which is kind of a way of closing off the argument. I said a thing, but if you... Anyway, I think statements like this is bad is kind of harmful to the Discord. It's fine saying, in my opinion, I don't like those. Again, that's just my opinion, because it's kind of minimizing the work done by lots of people who do use brush type of textures and noise and things like that. Just going, oh, that's all bad, is, I don't think that's a particularly useful stance for the community, particularly when people are seeing other people's work and they're just starting. If you're just starting out and then you see that statement, as I don't want to say the word gatekeeping, but it's a little gatekeepery. And I've got 3 more quick things that I want to say. An absolutely fine way of doing art is studying what other artists are doing and do commercial art. So if you look at all the generative art that's selling, you look at all the marketplaces, you look at like the top things that people like to buy that are doing well, and you go, well, I want to make successful artwork, so I'm going to learn from what those people are doing. I'm going to do my own take on it. And the things that are selling well are things that have noise and brushes, because apparently that's what people like, and that's fine. Following that because you want to actually make some money and be a part-time or a full-time artist. Studying the market is not wrong. That's commercial art. So choosing to do a thing because it's clearly popular is a perfectly valid way of doing art. Also, taking the stance of going, I believe we like lean into digital, we make everything super digital, is also a perfectly valid thing to do, and you can change your mind halfway through. So there's no one way of doing it. I'm just trying to reassure you that it's okay. It's okay. The second thing, which I'm not going to get into, but in discussions I've had, this has been mentioned to me. But also, because this happens in lots of other things as well, it's possible an aspect, I'm not saying that's what's going on here, and this is something that happens not subconsciously, whatever, on the download, but often delicate things, painterly things, or in lots of crafts are seen as feminine things. And this happens a lot in knitting and technology, things like that, where suddenly an engineer goes, oh, hey, knitting patterns are just like a coding language. I've just discovered this thing. And they kind of take this thing and present it in a different way. And cooking and chefs and things like that, that quite often, I don't want to go too deep into this, but quite often the more delicate things are going, well, that's not real because that's feminine over there, that's arts and crafts, whilst over here this is like fine art and graphic designer were leading the way forwards. But it's something to keep an eye out for, is when it is said generally or pushed forwards that a certain type of an area of art is not good but another area is good, that there might be societal things that are going on there as well that aren't necessarily completely surfaced. Again, that's not this video, that's a thing for another time, but I do want to address it as a thing that I've sort of thought about a little bit, and a few other people have said to me that, have you considered this as part of it? So that. And the final thing is Catt's rule. I've used this in another presentation, I can't find it anywhere now, but here's the slide, and that is my general philosophy on life. is don't pay attention to people who are older than you, pay attention to people younger than you. I am 50, which means you don't have to pay any attention to any of this or this rule. And I'm obviously not saying that people who are older aren't worth listening to, they are, but in my experience, virtually all the time, if you have a limited amount of time to spend, you will learn more paying attention to somebody who's younger than you will to someone older than you. Even though the person who's older than you can have very, very sensible things to say, they're always generally out of date. And that applies to this as well. So this has been my opinion time. Dan Catt's opinion time. Anyway, keep making wonderful, beautiful art. fxhash news. The testnet site, I think, has gone live, so people can upload projects onto the testnet and people can view the testnet. So hopefully that means everything is working. On the 11th, which is next Monday, or 3 days before the whole site goes live with version 2, artists can start to upload their work. So hopefully at that point, you'll all be able to upload everything, and then the site goes live on Thursday. Hopefully my next video will be on Wednesday. So we're going to have a good look at the projects that people have uploaded and then go through that flow. And then obviously the following week we'll be catching up with that. I think I'm going to take my monster project off the calendar altogether. I would love to be part of launch month, and I already have been with my project Tally, which I'll talk about in another video. Getting that project and everything ready will be really eating into family holiday time. So I think I'll just regroup at the start of January and then push towards that project at that point. But we'll talk about that here. Anyway, carry on making art however you want. Try to avoid declarative fact statements. This is good, this is bad, and things always work if you just stick, in my opinion, at the front. And you can have conflicting opinions and they can change over time. Don't worry about it. Make beautiful things. Goodbye.